A week has passed since the premiere of John Wick 4, which means we can now officially talk about the movie with spoilers. Interestingly, this is essentially the first movie in the franchise where we couldn't immediately and honestly discuss it after the premiere and had to avoid conversations about the ending with all our might. But a week without spoilers is enough time for anyone who wanted to see it to have gone to the theaters, especially considering that John Wick 4 is officially showing in all cinemas across the country. So did John die in the end or not? This is probably the main question today, so get comfortable and we'll try to give you a complete answer to it and at the same time convince you that John Wick is the new Schrodinger's cat, and we also answer a few other pressing questions about the film. Are you ready? Then let's go! But let's start with an unexpected point, namely the character of Shamir Anderson, who is credited as Tracker in the credits, but who we remember as Mr. Nobody. Almost immediately after the movie's premiere, opinions began circulating on the internet that the long-standing theories about the movie's Nobody and John Wick merging into one universe had finally come true. Yes, indeed, there were theories circulating on the internet at some point that these two movies could eventually merge, but friends, all of this is just rumors. Both films belong to different movie studios and brands, respectively, and such collaborations are too rare these days, so there hasn't been any confirmation of this event and it is unlikely to happen. And the name of one of the characters is just a coincidence. However, it does have one special detail, which we'll talk about a little later. You know how seriously we take the topic of spoilers. The second interesting thing that sets John Wick 4 apart from the rest of the franchise is the post-credit scene. This modern twist wasn't seen in any of the previous installments. However, this time it's different. So what does this ambiguous scene with Kane and Akira mean? Firstly, it's worth noting that the scene involving these two characters was left unfinished. In other words, we weren't shown how the encounter between the two sworn enemies would ultimately end. Although something suggests that an unexpected element might help Akira to finally get revenge on her father's killer. On the one hand, Kane is no pushover, and being a guy who fights on equal footing with John Wick, he can easily show the conceited girl who the real boss is here. And secondly, if you think about it, it was the only unfinished storyline in the movie. The main plot tied to John's freedom from persecution ended with the hero's death. Winston was restored to his position, and one could think that the only thread leading us to the fifth part is precisely that unfinished storyline of the daughter who dreams of avenging her father's death. But it seems that's not the case. Even if we didn't see direct shots of Kane's death, it doesn't mean that this storyline can be picked up. If Akira managed to seize the moment and put a knife into the killer's body, then her mission is accomplished and Kane died for his actions, betraying an old friend. And if not, then this storyline is still completed. Thus, the screenwriters left this door closed and didn't answer the question directly. There is no need to start peeling theories that Kane intercepted the blade at the last moment and disarmed the girl, and then took her under his care and started over. The story of a beaten-up man and a desperate girl in his care. No, one shouldn't expect such a thing. Although, considering that the Japanese Continental Hotel seems to have lost its elite status and its direct owner is dead, it is unclear what status Akira is in and whether there is a bounty on her head. And perhaps, considering the warm reception of Donnie Yen's character, his hero may be transferred to the fifth part of the franchise, becoming Akira's mentor, and additionally bringing in the events of the spin-off with Ana de Armas. Well, and perhaps the main question for today is whether Ryan Gosling died at the end of the drive or not. No, of course we are joking, but now we have a new meme with the same meaning, and its name is John Wick 4. To be honest, we were in complete shock when we saw the ending of the movie for the first time, especially considering that the announcement for the fifth installment had been made long ago. So in the end, did John Wick really die? There are two entirely logical scenarios. The first is that John Wick's death was purely staged. Why was it necessary? Well, simply because it was time for the hero to retire, and all his friends, including the Bower King and Winston, knew that John would still not be given rest. Yes, it seemed like the messenger announced that John's debts to the High Table were paid and he was free. But did you notice a small detail in the movie at the beginning? When Akira and Shimazu are walking up the stairs, in the still undamaged Japanese hotel, they talk about Shimazu having several meetings that day, one of which is with a certain Tarasov, a familiar last name. Yes, in the first movie, John systematically took out all the members of this clan, including Viggo and Joseph Tarasov, for what they did to his dog. It's also worth noting that in the sequel, we were shown Abram Tarasov, who, being a smart man, decided to make peace with John and not go too far in the war his brother started. Both men made peace, and in general, that story was finished. If it weren't for one thing, we were told 100 times that criminal organizations are like hydras. You cut off one head, and another will appear in its place. So remind me, what happened in the second installment? John killed 2 acting leaders of the Italian mafia from the D'Antonio house, and don't these guys want to finish Wick off? The debt for violating the rules of the Continental Hotel and for killing the elder was paid. That is true. However, John Wick can also become an ordinary target of any criminal boss, as was the case in the first part when Viggo put a bounty on John's head. At that time, John had not violated any rules or laws. Thus, the Italians are the first to continue hunting for John, despite there being no questions from the High Table. It's easy to understand that they are still alive and the clan continues its activities, because the same Abram Tarasov took Viggo's place and began to lead the Russian mafia. Criminal clans are like a hydra, and it's practically impossible to completely destroy them. At the same time, Abram Tarasov also seemed to have made peace with John, but at that time he didn't know that the Italians would be after John again, and together they could possibly kill the man who had killed so many of their people. In general, we have at least 2 significant opponents who are ready to pursue John until the very end, and he seems to have become a member of the Russian Camorra again, regaining his place in the clan. What does this even mean? It's unlikely that he only came out for one fight and is now free. He would be obliged to respond to the call of his boss and kill anyone at a whim. And that's not good for a man who wanted to retire. Thus, the motive to hide the fact that John survived, his friends had and still has. After all, they still remain in one way or another in criminal circles, and for the sake of their friend, they could take such a dangerous step using their connections. And the 5th film, which was announced long ago, has not disappeared and will continue to exist until it is actively developed. The director of the 4th part has already added fuel to the fire by saying that he and the entire film crew need a break after what they have done this time, and after the break, he and his team will be ready to start working on the 5th movie. And the fact that there are some unfinished elements in John Wick 4 won't stop him and his team from making a sequel. And that's where we come to the other side of the question. John Wick did indeed die in the finale of the new movie. So how will there be a continuation, and who said that the new movie will be an ideological continuation of the 4th one? The plot about John's endless escape from pursuers logically ended. This is the global difference between the failed, in our opinion, 3rd movie and the 4th one. If the 3rd part was too strained with endless shootouts and had no special meaning, then the 4th closed all the gaps and actually ended the story. So why go back to it again? There are plenty of blank spots in John's past, and there are even untold stories that we would love to see on the big screen. Yes, it would be a direct prequel to John Wick, but that deserves a topic for a separate video. And this video will definitely be released soon on the channel. But there is another option. In the 4th movie, Marquis de Grannon focused not on the distraction of John Wick himself, but on the idea of John Wick. What if the 5th film formally continues the plot, but without Keanu Reeves himself? For example, there is already one dog lover in the story, whose name we don't really know. This character came to respect and trust John Wick, and also hates the ruling class for what they did to him. We are talking about the so-called Mr. Nobody, played by Shamir Anderson, whose character is insanely cool and seemed a bit underdeveloped to us. Well, maybe that was the point. Even if the screenwriters gave enough time to Akira's plot, the guy who was so obsessed with money and was essentially betrayed by Marquis de Cremon should have been given at least another 10 minutes of screen time for a complete ending to his story. But his door remained unopened, and not only that, but in fact, John Wick 5 could tell the story of Mr. Nobody as a man who continued to fight the criminal system from within, in honor of the man who died because of that same system and whom he deeply respected. And in the end, Mr. Nobody could have taken on the name of John Wick, becoming the ideological successor of all the values of the main character, with his accurate shooting and love for four-legged creatures. Thus, it doesn't matter whether John Wick is alive or not, because his story logically ended. Unfortunately, a new film in the franchise will not be released before 2027 at best, given the official information about the hiatus in production. Although, on the other hand, the release of the Ballerina and the Continental Hotel series is coming soon, so the John Wick franchise is literally expanding after the death of the main character, and that means that the best is yet to come. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next one.